So how did I fire my very first client as a real estate transaction coordinator? So if you're working with an unruly, boundary breaking realtor or broker, then this is for you. Buckle up, subscribe. This particular realtor was a referral. So my friend actually referred me to this person because they had worked at the same brokerage. And remember, this is the friend that pretty much kicked off my from side hustle to business journey as a real estate transaction coordinator. So definitely go visit how I hired my first client video after this one. And the stakes were high. I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to disappoint her because I'm still new to this whole entrepreneurial journey in terms of running a business. What does that look like? And how am I going to find my way through this? And the only way I knew how to find my way through anything was to just say yes. So I said yes, and I took the call. In the beginning, I always assumed that if someone wanted to work with me or needed a TC, that I was going to be the one that was answering all the questions and things of that nature. So I didn't really have a routine or a set of questions that I would ask people. I would just kind of be in that position of, well, whatever you need, let me know if this works for you. So it took a few tries to realize that, oh, this is a two-way street, but I had to go through this first before I realized that. So my interview process, my onboarding process wasn't the typical way I do it today. And if you want to know how I do it today, definitely schedule a discovery call with me or visit my website, Transaction Care. Glad to help you through that process because it takes time, it takes practice. And I took the call with a specific realtor, and I could tell just from the beginning as we were getting to know each other that there was something a bit off, and I told her right out the gate, the one thing that was like non-negotiable for me at the time was my hours. I was like, let me just establish my hours right out the gate, 9 to 5, anything after hours, unless it's urgent, we'll take care of it first thing in the morning. But if it's urgent, you have to let me know. If you have phone call, text, just something in the subject line, urgent. And I'm glad I established that in the beginning, but this is where I messed up. And this is, I'm able to take accountability with my mistakes because in the beginning, I was just so grateful to be working with her. I was so grateful to have another client added to my roster, more money coming in, right? But as the saying goes, not all money is good money. So my mindset was, I'm just grateful to be here, right? And little did I know, I was essentially just creating a monster. Now, this is important because I speak to many of you, I coach many of you through this process. Like, you take on a client because you were desperate or you didn't want to say no or you didn't know how to say no. So you start breaking your own boundaries or your own rules little by little. And, they say you give an inch, they take a mile. Well, in real estate or business, as you will, you give an inch, they take 8 miles or more, depending on the day or the person, okay? So again, this was early in my career and I was already managing about 4 to 5 teams. So it wasn't like she was my only client that I was in a dire situation of working with. I just didn't know how to say no at the time. And the realtors I was working with on one end, they were all top producing realtors. So they were just rotating files all the time, keeping me super busy. So business was starting to pick up at this point, and I was already starting to feel a shift in my time and my schedule and my mindset and what was occupying my mind majority of the day, even at night when I wasn't working. So now when this realtor starts to reach out to me after hours, I would say yes. Like for one call, even though I'm emailing her throughout the week, throughout the day. So it's not like I'm going completely radio silent. She's just not responding to my emails. So I figured, well, if she wants to talk, this is my only opportunity to talk to her. Let me just let her know and we'll get it over with. I'm thinking it's 1 or 2 phone calls, text messages after hours, and we're done. Unfortunately, not. So now this realtor thinks I'm available after hours. So she starts texting me up, asking me for updates on her files. And mind you, I had already emailed her this information throughout the week, throughout the day, as I said, during business hours. So that was my red flag number 1, was the texts and calls started to occur later and later throughout the day. 6 p.m. turned into 7 p.m., 7 p.m. turned into 8 p.m., 8 p.m. turned into, well, you catch my drift. And at first, I would respond and explicitly tell her, to check her inbox. And then we'd end up going over every item while she was on the phone. And I'd be like, okay, well, at least we got it over with. But then it kept happening. And there was no regard for my life, my well-being, my time. And unfortunately, I did reply that first 1 or 2 times. So that part is definitely on me. But red flag number 2 was she wanted me to update her more than a couple times a day. And she was kind of treating me like her assistant, which I didn't like, because as a transaction coordinator, you're involved in the transaction, but you're not that involved in everything. Your realtor shouldn't put you in charge to do their job. Now, if you're a licensed real estate transaction coordinator, meaning you have your real estate license, yes, there's a lot more you can do, but there still has to be this business dynamic and relationship established between you and your realtor, that you're not coming in and taking over. You're just a part of the team, the starting 5, if you will. Starting 5, I use that in quotes because every team is different and structure is different. But she started to want daily updates. And even if I emailed her or if there were no updates, and this was getting out of control because it was starting to be around the clock. Like I said, the times got later and later. The text messages stopped, and now she's calling, blowing up my phone, and her messages would not be anything related to her transactions, but they would be filled with frustrations about reaching me. Where are you? What are you doing? It just got out of control. And instead of being immediately available like I was those first couple of calls, I would reply with just a text message. And I'd say I'd get back to you. I'd say I'd get back to my desk at 9 a.m. Unless this is an urgent matter, please call me or leave me a voicemail. I will get back to you in the morning. Something to that effect. I'd also follow that up with re-forwarding the emails that I'd sent throughout the day, throughout the week, letting her know this is where we're at with this file. There's nothing more or less that I could do at that point because I'd done everything up to my capacity and my capabilities for that specific transaction. And if there was anything else she needed me to do, she never explicitly told me in the emails to do so. So even when she wasn't communicating with me or trying to reach me, or if I wasn't updating her, she was starting to take over my mind and causing me internal stress. So I looked at that as something's got to give. And eventually I stopped replying to her evening calls entirely. And I would respond in the morning because how I was communicating in the past just wasn't working. And this just goes back to, me creating this monster from the beginning. So all of this could have been preventable had I stuck to my boundaries and didn't break my rules along the way, even if it was just for one call, one text. That one call, that one text created this monster of chaos. So long story short, she did not like the fact that I wasn't replying to her at all in the evenings. And no matter how many times I communicated to her my hours, gave her updates, she was one of those that you give an inch, they take 8 miles. And responding after hours to her became the standard, unfortunately, because that's what I did in the beginning, and she expected that the whole way through, no matter how many times I corrected it. And because I thought having a conversation, letting her know, like, hey, just letting you know, these are my hours, that it would fix it. Unfortunately, it did not. So, and from that perspective, I considered, should I just move my schedule to later or make her the exception? And I said, no, I'm not, because I work with so many other top producers, and unless it's something I absolutely may have forgotten or didn't do, they'll reach out to me and then they'll leave me be because they're busy doing other things like remaining a top producer. So unfortunately, a lot of miscommunication. It was still me being naive and stubborn. And I realized I had to let her go. But because I was still so nervous and afraid, I had never fired anyone directly. I was so afraid to make less money, less in quotes. And I was so afraid and worried that she would fire me and then tell my friend and it would backfire on me, and then he'd fire me. And I was just really in my head, and I was afraid this would jeopardize my reputation. And among those many, there were so many more fears and emotions, and because of my inexperience, I felt stuck. So I kept her around for a little longer. So throughout this time, I'm now starting to get calls and texts from my friend, the one who referred me. And this was already a fear in my head that he would somehow get involved. And he called me kind of furious and annoyed, like, hey, what's going on? And I said, no, you have to understand what's going on. And I broke it down. Everything I just told you guys right now, I explained it to him, and I said, I'm not ignoring her. She's just not responding or looking at her inbox for whatever reason. I call her back, I text her back, and after a while, I just got tired of it because it got later and later throughout the day. Once it got past 9 p.m., I said, no, enough is enough. And he totally understood. I'm glad he gave me a chance to explain myself and didn't just, decide to fire me on the spot or talk bad about me or listen or take her word for it. So he understood, and he replied with some comments of like, well, yeah, she's a lot to work with, and she's like this with everyone. And I was sarcastically and nervously kind of like, well, a heads up would have been nice. So red flag number 3, 1, 2, 3, is she snitched on me to my friend. And I already had some PTSD because this happened to me at my old office when I took over as office manager. The old office manager, who was my actual friend outside of work, she used to stay after hours and help realtors in her own time. She'd give them her phone number. So I didn't know any of this was happening because I would clock out and I would go home. And when she left the company and I was put in charge, basically these realtors that were getting this extra help from her, where she was doing their work for them, it stopped. And they got used to a certain standard, if you will, or treatment. I think that's a better word. So when she left, it was gone. And when I became office manager and they were coming up to me asking, how come this hasn't been done? When is this going to be done? I don't know how to do this, blah, blah, blah. I said, you do know how to do this. You've done it before. I've seen you do it before. Why all of a sudden can you not do this? And they explained to me, well, so-and-so used to do it for me. She would stay after hours. Like, why don't you do that? And I said, oh, because that's not how I'm running the office. So little did I know these realtors were being spoiled by her. And I had to clean up this whole mess. But long story short, this so-called friend of mine called my manager to tell on me, to say, hey, she's not doing this, and that for these realtors. I used to do this. And this is not in the job description. These were not tasks that were meant for the office manager nor the transaction coordinator, because I was doing both. I was the office manager and the TC, and occasionally the front desk, depending if they were on vacation or not. So it was a very small office, and I understood helping everyone and getting to know different parts and going above and beyond. Because if you watch how I hired my first video, those assets, those skills that I accumulated over the years at that office, I took into running my business. But I learned a good lesson in boundaries in that moment when she called the office to tell on me. And I spoke to my manager directly because I was not going to let anyone talk bad about me, mess up my name, my reputation for something I wasn't supposed to even be doing in the first place. So that was my story within a story about how I felt like I was basically in the twilight zone. And the fact that this is happening again, it was just giving me like work PTSD all over again. But in all honesty, that day I lost a friend, but gained my job with more respect and command because I wasn't going to put up with that. So I knew I had it in me to essentially fire that realtor, but because this was now my business, I hesitated. But after a while, I said, enough is enough. And because I knew she would twist my words or lie to others about my whereabouts and text me an email at all hours of the day when I wasn't working, I had to do it. And as nervous as I was, I knew I had to get through it. And I drafted up an email, read it over and over again until I finally hit send. And the reason I did it via email is because, again, she was the type that Even if I called back or responded, she still goes snitching on to other people. So I said, this can't just be verbal. And if she wants to call me and talk about it, we can, but I have to have this in writing. So I hit send, and we were mid-transaction. We were in the middle of transactions, and I said, I don't care about the money. And once I deprioritized the money, it's like this sense of freedom and peace just took over. And I was just done. I was done with her antics, her disregard, her disrespect for my hours, and for the clashing. Just we clashed so much. So not all money is good money, and not all clients are good clients, but you have to learn how to discern and go through those things and have those conversations and really be bold with your boundaries, because it eventually does come to bite you in the behind if you veer away, even at the slightest. Because again, you give an inch, they take 7-8 miles, okay? From that point on, after her and I had a conversation, and I said, no, I'm done. We're done. You can give this away. You don't have to pay me, not even for half the work. I'm forfeiting it. I'm done. It's not worth it. It just wasn't worth it. And from that point on, it was a game changer for myself internally, my confidence, my courage, my boldness in my actions and my choices and my decisions. And from that point on, I changed my hiring process. I had more questions to ask. I had every different type of scenario. Like if they ask this is what I'll say. If I don't know the answer, this is how I will respond. If they challenge me on certain things, that's either a red flag or a green flag for me. So it really helped me to evolve and mature as an adult, as a business person, as well as in my mind. Like something clicked that day. And I'm so glad I went through that, because it made it a lot easier if and when I had to do it later in life, which I did. And it wasn't because of this dramatic exit that I had to go through, but I just had a better understanding of the process. So if I was let go, I understood. If I had to let someone else go, it was easier than it was the first time. So any questions, drop them in the comments. If you're working with an unruly or boundary breaking realtor or broker, then this was for you, because I know I'm not alone in this. I have spoken to many of you throughout the course of these past few years, especially when I became a coach. That was one of the top problems, is boundaries and communication and being able to assert yourself in these positions, because you're in charge. You're your own boss now. You're your own manager. So if you're unable to do these things like hiring and firing people, it makes the job, the business, the career a lot more difficult. But it does take practice. And you may not get it right the first go around, and that's okay, because you kind of have to go through a lot of bad eggs before you get to the good ones. But you may get blessed and be blessed with the good ones first and a couple bad ones after. But you set the precedence for your business. You set the standard, and you uphold that standard. If you go after hours, then you have to bite the bullet and go after hours. But every situation is different, and everyone's boundaries are different. Some TCs work around the clock, 24/7. They're available. That's normal. Some people work 9 to 5. Some people work part-time. It's fine. But communication is key, because once you change your mind, you can't be the only one that knows. Everyone has to know. All right, I was once 24/7. I'm going down to 9 to 5. So communication. And I had a choice to stay and suffer or go out and thrive. Once money stopped being a deciding factor and I let go, I felt so free. So I hope this story resonates with you, impacts you in your journey. Please schedule a discovery call with me, or visit my website, transactioncare.com, so you can learn more about my services, sign up for a coaching session. I would love to work with you and many more of you one-on-one this season of my life. And if you want to reach me as well on another platform, visit my community. Just visit transactioncare.com, join the community. It's free to join. There are paid tiers, but once you're in there, it's free to join. It's your choice if you want to add the tiers for additional coaching and bonus content as well. I do live Q&As, and it's a good time over there. So join. And everything lives at transactioncare.com. Weekly videos will still live here on the Transaction Care YouTube channel, unless otherwise noted. And if you have any questions, just reach out. Join the community, subscribe here, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Again, all of that on my website. Until the next video, My name is Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily. Care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you double tap my smiley face and click on one of these videos so you can continue watching.